Hello everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com, and this is going to be the first in a series of videos I'm going to be doing, just covering some foundational ideas that I want to get across on many of my podcast feeds, YouTube, Facebook, so that way everyone can kind of have a point of reference over some of these basic ideas such as property rights, money, etc. So this is Property Rights 101. This will be broken up into two videos. This first video making the case for property rights, and video number two talking about the sort of criticism and addressing the criticisms of property rights. So first, kind of define sort of how a property rights system works and sort of what does it do. Mainly what a property rights system does, it's a system that one defines when an individual can claim ownership of some type of property, which means they have the right to exclude others from the use of that property. Doesn't mean they have to do that. People are free to share and allow others to use their property, but they have the right to exclude. So for example, if I own a car, if I have my car, I can let you use my car. I can share my car with others. I am well within my right to do so. But I don't have to. I don't have to let you use my car. I have the right to say, don't touch my car. So that's essentially property rights. It's really the right for someone to be able to claim a specific piece of property that's well defined and exclude others from the use of that property. And have the right to sort of defend that claim. Now, why is this important? Because this can sound very controversial in some things. Mainly because there's something called scarcity. There just isn't an infinite amount of everything in the world. So let's take apples, for example. There's only so many apples. So some people may say, hey, how about we just split up all the apples equally? Problem is, not everyone needs apples, and not everyone needs apples for the sake of apples. Some people may want an apple pie. Some people may want apple cider or other apple type stuff, and they may need different amounts of apples to create those things, and some of them may want those things more than others. So there's this sort of impossibility of calculating sort of what everyone's personal values of these things are to be able to sort of get the best bang for your buck for them, because if some people like bananas better than apples, then giving them both an equal amount of bananas and apples doesn't maximize sort of value or happiness in society. I'd be much better off giving the person who likes bananas more bananas, and the person who likes apples more apples. And while that's an unequal distribution, you have a greater amount of happiness in the world, because they both have something that they enjoy more. Not all capital, not all resources are created equal or equally valued. So the problem is when you have someone who tries to sort of plan who gets what, a central plan, they don't know what's in everyone's mind and heart. They don't know what everyone values. They don't know every possible use for every piece of resource. Because beyond apple cider and apple juice and apple pie, there's so many other uses for apples that I can't think of for me to truly be able to sit there and then also on top of that know what's in people's heart and minds as far as how they value things, to really allocate these resources to sort of maximize happiness. So in that case, you don't want a central plan, but it needs to be a system so that way we can figure out who gets to use what. So that's where property rights come into place, in the sense of saying, hey, you know what, whoever got to it first in the beginning, if nobody owns something, if something is unclaimed, basically whoever gets to it first and claims it first has right to that. If you find a piece of land and you can define the piece of land that is yours, whether it's by building a fence, you've defined that plot of land, that land is yours because no one else got to it first. There's no one else who can say, hey, that was mine before it was yours. And if someone else can justifiably claim that they put a claim before you made your claim, well, then their claim wins out. And that's sort of what courts would be for, and that's essentially what all legal adjudication is. This basically determining whose property is whose property, and then what are the responsibilities of owning that property. Because owning that property doesn't just mean you get the benefit of excluding people, but you also have the liability of the damages that property may cause. So if a car is yours and you crash into somebody's house, we now know you are responsible for covering those damages. That's another benefit of property rights. We can better define who's responsible when bad things happen, because we can say that's somebody's property. The problem is that if property isn't somebody's, it becomes more difficult. Because if it's everybody's car and everybody's food and everybody's everything, then everything is everybody's problem. Okay, so then when you crash your car into somebody's house, everybody is now sort of paying the bill. It's everybody's fault. And that makes it very difficult to sort of manage in society, the incentives in society. So let's recap so far. Because we're able to individually claim property, we can, one, better allocate property to those who enjoy it the most. Why? Because since you can individually sit there and seek out property, you will take the property that you do have and and exchange it for property you like better. So if you have $10, but you rather have 10 apples, you might spend those $10 on 10 apples. The 10 apples make you happier than the $10, or else you wouldn't have made that exchange. But that person who had the 10 apples was happier with the $10. So both of you are now happier, and all these individual transactions over time move things to those who will be happier. Not necessarily the happiest, because again, we're not omniscient. We don't know what is in everybody's hearts. So and then what people want, what make people happy is constantly changing. So sort of, the theoretical ideal is constantly changing. So it's not like that's what's happening, but you're always getting closer as people exchange, because people are always exchanging the things they have for things that they'll think will make them happier. Does that mean they always do? No. Sometimes you buy something and it turns out not to make you as happy as you thought it would, but now you know. And now going forward, you're going to be better able to make exchanges because you now know what things weren't as good as you thought they were, what things were maybe even better than you expected. So all those exchanges also allow us to become better measures of our own happiness, to be better at this whole allocation of resources. At the same time, that ownership of property helps us define who's responsible in the cases where there's damages and things that go wrong. So these are the sort of the benefits of property rights. And it also allows people, it also creates incentives to accumulate property. So that means people are trying to find ways to create new types of properties. That's called innovation. When we take the property that already exists, we take apples and sugar and flour and make it into an apple pie that someone may value more than all those pieces put together. And we create new property that is worth more. And we are building our wealth that way because we're creating new things that people value. And we have an incentive to do so because it allows us to build up our own individual property, to discover newer, better properties. So we have the incentive for innovation. Resources get reallocated to sort of where it maximizes happiness, and we help discover responsibility. These things help society run better. And absent these things, basically, there is just scarcity, and then it just becomes sort of, when nothing is for sure anybody's stuff, then basically it just comes down to who can fight for it, because there's no system to discover who should use X. Everyone can just sort of ad hoc create their own justification for why X property should be X persons and someone should get to use it. While your traditional property rights framework, as articulated in this audio, kind of does that. So that's the case for property rights. In the next video, I'll discuss more, or next audio clip, I will discuss more sort of what's the case, or the criticisms and what are the answers to those criticisms. So I'll talk to you guys then. This is Alex.